Day 11. Another long day and into the night in the bone-chilling cold. This terrible night I get too cold. The cold is coming down on me like death, and I must run to keep my body temperature up. I run 50 paces and ride 50, and run 50 and ride 50 the whole night, and the running brings my body heat back up. But I cannot get enough air through my 2 wool masks, so I pull them down and breathe straight into my mouth. I get enough air then, but the cold, raw air freezes the sides of my throat, and the blood vessels burst, and my throat generates mucus, and soon I am choking on it. It is very hard to clear. I must stick my finger down my throat to pull it all out, and when I throw it out on the ice, the wheel dogs turn around and eat it. This makes me throw up, and they eat that as well, and I spend the whole day and night running up the river, hacking blood and mucus, and vomiting and hallucinating. When I approach the village, this is the last checkpoint on the Yukon River. I look up on some cliffs on the left side of the river and see a bunch of crosses. We have been told about the graveyard to the south of town, and I feel the ghosts of all the dead in the graveyard welcoming me to the end of the river run. It is a warm feeling, a gentle calling. I nod to them and smile and turn off the river on the overland trail to the Bering Sea. It is the end of the river and the end of day 11. Day 12. There is a change on this day, in the dogs and in me. We run down the river onto the Bering Sea on a classic run. It is about 0 or slightly above, and the sun, there is sun, and it is downhill for over 90 miles, and the dogs run to my mind. I have changed, have moved back in time, have entered an altered state, a primitive state. At one point, there is a long uphill grade over a mile, and I lope alongside the sled easily, lightly, pushing gently to help the dogs. My rhythm, my movement is the same as the dogs. We have the same flow across the tundra, and I know that we will finish. We could run forever into the wind, across the short grass, run for all the time there has been and all the time that there will be, and I know it, and the dogs know it. We come out on the coast of an Eskimo village, and one of the villagers, an older man, takes me in for the night and feeds me with a great gentleness and talks to me while I sit in his small house. When my eyes close and won't open, he shows me a bed he has prepared for me. As I go to sleep, I see him walk by wearing only long underwear, and he looks the same as the man who saved me in the burn and earlier when I was sick. He has the same curved, strong shoulders and a quiet, soft strength. When I awaken some hours later and check the dogs and get ready for the run up the coast, he comes out to wish me well. We run out of the village north, with the sun coming up on our right, heading north again, the only direction, and it is the end of day 12. Day 13. There is something about the ocean that affects me. It is open offshore, not frozen, and blue from the sky, and though it is about 20 below, it is a soft cold, and the dogs are full of it. They won't stop to rest, keep hitting the harnesses. One female named Blue starts shredding her harness with great glee as a joke each time I stop to feed or rest if I don't get her food fast enough. I am sitting in the fourth to the last checkpoint when the race ends. We still have 200 or so miles to go across part of the ice on Norton Sound, and it is completely over. They're having their banquets, and the winner is being paid, and there's cheering, and I still have 4 days to go to finish, and we do not care. We run the hills easily, letting the team do as they wish. I stand on the back or push up the hills and do not care about winning or losing, only the dance counts. The beauty is, as through the whole race, staggering. The hills, which would have once put me off with their steepness, are full of light and game. Clouds rise like giant white snowflakes into a bright sun in front of the dogs, sometimes 200-300 of them. And the strange Arctic hares that stand on their back legs to see better are all over the place. They seem to be people, especially in the twilight, as evening comes and the edges of hallucinations start. I keep thinking there are people standing in back of the bushes to watch us pass. Finally, the dogs can stand it no longer, and they take off from the trail, chasing one of the hares, and I get a thrilling ride down a long hill. The hare easily outdistances the dogs, and they wheel back up the hill in a single sweeping circle. They do not care that they failed to catch him. The dogs fairly hum with energy as we slide gleefully down the final hills into the checkpoint just before we go out onto the ice, and it is the end of day 13. Day 14. From Shaktoolik, we must cross Norton Sound. Depending on who is telling you, it is apparently about 60 miles of sea ice. Horror stories about the sound. Rumors. Somebody had gone through the ice, and they found her team wandering alone. Someone else went insane and is making big circles out on the ice, but nobody wants to stop him because he will be disqualified if he is given help. Somebody was found dead on her sled. Somebody was torn from his sled by the wind, and the dogs blew 30 miles across the ice sideways, and he didn't find them for 2 days. Somebody was on a large cake of ice, and it broke loose and headed out to sea. They are worried that she will not be found or may drift across the Bering Sea to Russia. Somebody froze his eyeballs because he didn't blink enough, and blind, but finishing the race anyway. Somebody froze his nose, and it will have to be amputated. All the rumors are virtually unfounded, but they zip through the area as they did at Rainy Pass, and I leave the checkpoint at dawn to head across the ice with some doubt. It is the end of day 14. Day 15. The ice gives us a joy run. The wind abates, the sun comes out, the trail across the flat, frozen seawater, and the dogs are well rested. We fly. I let them lope easily in a gentle canter for close to 40 miles before they come down into a trot. When we stop to rest, the rest of the dogs actually start playing like puppies, crouching down and bouncing toward each other. The day passes in a kind of Gidget goes to Nome happiness, and when darkness comes, I see the light of the checkpoints across the flat ice, and the dogs do well, and they start running towards them in the same easy lope. Distances are very deceiving out on the ice, however, and we still probably have 30 or so miles to go. In a while, it seems as if the lights will never get closer, and the dogs break down into a fast trot that carries them all the way in. As we enter the village, a small boy leaps out of the darkness and grabs the leaders by the back of their harnesses to lead them up into his house, where I will spend the checkpoint time. It is a nice gesture, but the dogs pile up on themselves, get tangled, and turn inward. I am terrified they will begin fighting with the boy in the middle. Children and even adults have died this way, and I run up to him and grab him by the back of the jacket and hold him away from the dogs and ask him why he grabbed my team. He smiles and says it's because he wants a team to stay at his house so he can learn about the dogs and sleds. And I am stunned that an Eskimo boy on the Bering Sea would have to ask someone from Minnesota about dogs. I stay in his house, and his family feeds me, and they treat me with the same gentle courtesy the older man showed me earlier. I try to speak of the dogs, but I find that I cannot speak well, can only talk in grunts and single words, and have some trouble being with people. After a time, I go back out with the dogs and sleep with them on the ice. I awaken at dawn just as the team pulls in. They look good and fresh for just coming across the ice, and I am surprised to see the musher run forward with a little rubber duck and roll on the snow with his dogs, squeezing the squeaky toy for them and playing with them. They love the game, and he keeps hiding the toy from them, and they keep trying to get it away from them. Then he puts the duck away and dresses them in doggy sweaters so they can sleep warm, and I leave the checkpoint in a kind of gladness that I had seen him, a gladness that I knew dogs and they knew me, and that we had come together. And it is the end of day 15. Days 16 and 17. 2 more checkpoints. We run along the coast, along the edge of the ice with towering cliffs going up to our right. The ocean is breaking away the ice, and finally there is nothing except water in front, so we angle up into the country, across a mountain, dead over the top of it, and down into another bay of ice. Here the wind is strong and blowing straight from the rear. The ice is sheer, flat, absolutely slick, and the wind blowing from the rear makes my body act as a snail. The sled blows forward and sideways, and I must ride to keep from running up on the dogs all across the bay. The dogs seem to smell Nome now. They have changed, and know we are near the end. And when we leave the last checkpoint but one and head out onto the beach, a 40-mile-long beach ending in Nome, they seem to have a new purpose in their steps. It is perhaps all in my head, but then so much else is that it doesn't matter. We run through the day along the edge of the beach, running on the ice itself because the wind has blown all the snow off the beach sand. As dark comes, I see the lights of the finish of Nome 20 or more miles ahead, and when I realize what they are, I stop the team. I do not want to go in and finish the race. I do not understand why, but I do not want to go in. I actually begin to walk up and take my leader and turn the dogs around and run, back. There's no sense to it, but somehow it is because the race is something that doesn't seem like it can be done. Not really. You can talk about it and plan for it and train for it, but it is not something you can do. The run. Even though when you are making the run, it doesn't seem possible, and while you are in it, crossing the Alaska Range at Rainy Pass and running through the burn and across the interior, even when you think you are alone on the planet, and then know that you are alone on the planet, even as you run out to the coast and up the coast and across Norton Sound and along the icy cliffs through all the glorious northern villages with names like Kaltag and Koyuk and Shaktalik and Unuklik and Elim, and even when you see the lights of Nome and think you will finish easily, even then it is not something you can do, not something that can be done, and yet you do it. And then it becomes something you don't want to end, ever. You want the race, the exultation, the joy, and the beauty of it to go on and on. And so I stopped them and thought of turning around and going back into the middle of the world, the place I had found in the center of the world where it was only the dogs and only me, and I had hung there for a time with my hand on the leader's head, and I think I would have turned them except I heard a yell, and it was from my wife. A man in Nome had brought her out on a small road in a jeep. They had seen me coming and seen me stop, and her voice broke the spell. I got off the sled and let them run, and they followed the ice along the beach until we hit the ramp where they launch boats, and we ran up onto that front street and down the mile to bare asphalt to the arch, the finish line. Cookie, the leader, stopped before the arch, and I had to drag her beneath it to finish. She was afraid of the crowd of people. I turned and could not keep from crying as I hugged my wife and son, and then the dogs, starting from the front to the back, hugging each dog until two mushers took them away to put them on beds. And I turned to the mayor of Nome, who was there to greet me, and said the one thing I never thought I would ever say: "We'll be back to run it again." And I knew that it was true.